What's going on, everyone? You're listening to the Brazos Sports Preps Cast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by Abigail Ochoa of the Eagle. How's it going today, Abigail?
Hey, doing good, doing good.
Well, we got a special guest because it's a big week in the Texas high school football season, at least here in the Brazos Valley. And that's Mike Lucas from KAGS. Mike, welcome back. You're one of our favorites. It's good to have you on as always.
Well, you guys are two of my favorite media members in the Brazos Valley as well. So anytime I get to come on here and talk about some of the unbelievable high school football we've been having in the area, I mean, I can't say no. I want to give a shout out to my boys at Walk On Radio, Brian and Dalton doing big things. We're supporting brands. Let's make a pact right now. We support brands that support us. So Walk On Radio, we'll support them, and we support good high school football. And there is no shortage of that on the schedule this Friday, guys.
Not at all.
Abigail, for sure. For sure. Yeah, well, let's get into it. Obviously, the biggest game that we're all alluding to here, A&M A&M Consolidated hosts Rudder for a battle of second place in 10-5A Division II. I feel like there should be a drum roll here. I mean, this is a game that we've all been waiting for. But yeah, both teams obviously have a playoff spot wrapped up, but this one has big seeding implications like we've talked about before. The winner gets a home game in the first round with the loser, possibly taking that trek to deep East Texas there. But Mike, let's start with you. How big of a game is this for Rudder? They haven't beaten Consol before. They've come close last season, but this is definitely the best Rangers team yet. And so how big is this game for them?
Well, this whole season has been the season of first for Rudder. Never beat Huntsville. Check. Never made the playoffs. Check. And I talked to head coach Eric Izar yesterday, and he just said, hey, we have a checklist of things that we want to accomplish with this Ranger football program, and we're just going down the list. And one of those next boxes to check off is beat the crosstown showdown rival in A&M Consolidated. Rudder, before the year started, I don't think any of us expected a 7-1 start to the year. I mean, we thought Rudder had a chance to be good, but 7-1. I mean, like, come on, guys. And they've played some pretty good teams. The way they beat Huntsville in overtime on the road, the way they came back after losing to Montgomery, like, this team has proven that it's not just a one-hit wonder. They can beat you in multiple ways. They have E.J. Izar at quarterback. Trenton McClinton has been phenomenal at running back. Their receivers, even after losing Keith Ron Lee, I think have done a really admirable job stepping up and making plays. But maybe most impressively to me, their defense has been really good, and it's been consistent. And that's the one thing with Rudder in the past that we haven't seen as much of is, hey, one week they look great, and then all of a sudden the defense forgets how to play, and they are committing some silly penalties and whatnot. But that hasn't been the case this year. This defense, I give Coach Izar credit because it's a veteran defense, and this is now his third year, so you can kind of see them maturing under his tutelage. But this defense has been really darn good, and that kind of to me has been the surprise. When you look at this matchup with Consol, yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, it's little brother, big brother syndrome. Consol is big brother in town. Rudder's the new kid on the block. And when you have a new challenger as the established entity that Consol, you don't want to give up any bragging rights. You don't want to give up any ground. And as Rudder continues to climb and ascend into a, perennial power in District 10-5 AD2, like, I think Consol more than anything, even without Brody Daniel, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a sec. Like, this is still hey, this is our block. And if you want to get into the party, like, you want to be allowed into the block party, for lack of a better word, like, you have to beat us. And it's on our turf, in our house, in front of our crowd. And you've never beat us before. Like, if you want to do it, you got to come prove it, because we're not going to lay down and give it to you. So, yeah, we said against Huntsville, this may have been Rudder's biggest game in program history. Well, they flashed that test with flying colors, or maybe not flying, but they passed. It wasn't an F. They won. So, this is now 4 weeks later, the new biggest game in Rudder history. And I cannot wait to see it unfold.
Well, Mike, you mentioned Brody Daniel. Obviously, I'm going to turn to Alex now to talk a little bit about Consol. He's been following them this season. Will Hargett, obviously, we know, is taking over Consol's offense with Brody Daniel sidelined with a head injury. Alex, what will the Tigers need to do to get moving against this big Rudder defense, like Mike mentioned? Obviously, has been pretty consistent this season and, leads the district this year. So what are the Tigers going to need to do?
Yeah, I wrote about it earlier this year. Consol's offensive line, just the success that they've had, that's been the difference maker on offense for them. They're not letting the quarterback get sacked at rates that they have in previous seasons. They're getting push up front. You think about the way that they beat Converse Judson, just running it down their throat. And Consol's had to weather some injuries too, whether it's up front on the offensive line or it's in the backfield. I mean, last week they're playing with their third and fourth string guys and still run for a good number of yards. Like we've said though, Rudder's got a really good defensive front. Davion Howard's playing really well. Jeremiah Johnson, he's playing really well. They've got that one guy in the middle that's just huge, and his name's slipping my mind. But I mean, Rudder's got it up front. And that's what I asked Coach Fedora on Monday. It's like, hey, how important is it to win the line of scrimmage up front? I mean, you could say that in any game, but this game in particular, I think that is even more of an emphasis, especially, if Will Hargett's the guy this week, which we're expecting that to be the case, he's not really big. And so you need to protect your freshman quarterback at all costs, especially against a couple of guys that are seniors that they can get some push and they can bring it every single play. And Rudder like to bring it up front. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a hallmark of that defense this year is they like to bring the blitz. Now, my thing is, Consol's going to have to establish the run. That's been the bread and butter of this offense all season. They have a balanced attack. They have great receivers, but when push comes to shove, they're running the ball and they hit it hard downfield. They've had some guys out. I'm curious if they'll get some people back. But they're going to have to be able to run the ball really well. They've got a guy, Dre Minor, who transferred from Rudder. And, this game's pretty personal to him. And so, we'll see how they can calm emotions. And, you play with emotion, but you don't play emotional. That's the way that coaches always phrase that. But as far as Will Hargett goes, last week had a few passes downfield, had a really nice touchdown pass to Wesley Greaves. But the way that they seem to get him comfortable is by throwing a lot of screens. That seems to be the way that they get him comfortable in that offense. And they've got the receivers to where, hey, you throw a little quick screen out to Wesley Greaves, that man can turn it on down the sideline pretty fast. And they've got some good blockers out there with Wyatt McDougal and Tyler Wright. I mean, they can execute those screens really well. And so, protecting the quarterback, establishing the run, and being able to make those easy throws. I mean, it all sounds simple, but, in a game like this, sometimes the simple things, that's the difference between winning and losing. And that's kind of what Consol's facing this Friday. Mike, it looks like you're chomping at the bit to say something.
Well, yeah, I want to launch an investigation into how to properly pronounce Wesley Graves or Greaves' last name, because every time I've heard a coach refer to him, I don't know. And I'm going out to practice today. I will get a definitive answer. I will put him on the record to clear it up, because I say Graves, you say Greaves, Tyler Shaw at KBTX says Greaves. So one of us is right and three of us are wrong. So we do need to put an end to that investigation. I'll go cease on y'all and Travis and request some FOIAs for you. But no, I think you nailed it on the spot, Alex. Will Hargett has a chance to be a really special player. He's 14 years old. I mean, he's 14 going against some big defensive linemen on Rudder. And I think Coach Fedora and that offensive staff have done a phenomenal job since he took over in getting the ball out of his hands quickly and not making him have to make too many reads. If his first option isn't open, they tell him to either take off and run or throw the ball away. And I think that's crucial against the Rudder defense because, as you mentioned, he may weigh 120 pounds soaking wet. Like, he's not a big kid, and he shouldn't be. He's 14 years old. Like he shouldn't be physically developed yet. And he's just kind of a slender, skinny kid. I was there. Well, I'm still there. Like, I'm a skinny kid too. So it happens. And I was never the caliber of athlete you are. So protect yourself, because if he goes down, I'm not sure what they have after him. And I just want to say one more thing about this matchup. I wish Brody Daniel was still able to play, because what that offense was doing with his ability to run from the quarterback position alongside the plethora of running backs they have. Is Trey Taylor not playing, Alex? Is he out again this week?
I'm not really sure of his status. It didn't seem hopeful. I'll say that, but I'm not too sure. I was there on Monday, so you'll have to get an update for us.
I'll be out there this afternoon. I know Keyshawn was still questionable, so they are down to their third and fourth running backs, but that offensive line, when it's clicking, you and I could find some of those holes. I just go back to that Huntsville game, and Abigail, I don't believe you were there, but I know Alex was. Trey Taylor scored on the exact same play 3 times in the first half. The exact same play, and the hole just got bigger and bigger and bigger each time they ran it. And I don't know all their names, but I know it's a credit to Rhett Larson and the rest of the guys up front who deserve way more love than I've given them. So I want to put my hand up once again. I apologize to the Tigers front 5 because you guys have been really outstanding all year long and on TV.
Barton Melder and Cody Clow and a couple of those other guys. Yeah, we'll give them a shout out.
Yeah, you guys deserve. I wish offensive lineman highlights sold because you guys deserve to be on FNL, not just the running backs. It doesn't work like that. So from the bottom of my heart, I am sorry. And that is the matchup to watch. I think you nailed it. It's the Rudder defensive line versus the Consol offensive line. And can Rudder's DBs match up with the speed of Consol's offensive weapons on the outside? Because it only takes one big play to change a game. And Hargett only has to hit Wesley G. You see what I did there? He only has to hit Wesley G on one deep pass to change the complete trajectory of what's going to happen. So I can't wait to watch. And Alex, to answer your question from earlier in the week, I will be there. And it's going to be a fun one, man. I can't wait.
Yeah, well, great points, guys. A lot of good information there. Now I know, we said it earlier last season, Consol was able to come out with that win. It was a pretty tight game. I know me and Alex weren't there. But Mike, how do you expect this atmosphere to be pretty amazing on Friday? I mean, you get 2 local teams like this. We've seen it in the past. Consol's won every matchup so far. But these are 2 great teams that we're bringing in, like y'all mentioned, y'all talked about. How big do you think this atmosphere will be?
I think it's going to be pretty crazy. I mean, Consol usually draws a big crowd on the home side, no matter who they're playing. And that's the community that you look at. Even College Station and Consol, it's a town or a city, whatever you want to call College Station, that supports its local high school athletics. So I have no doubt in my mind that they'll draw. And then you look at Rudder. This is the best Rudder team they've ever had. I mean, I don't think that could be overstated. This Rudder team has already broken or tied the record for wins in a season. It's their first playoff berth ever. Coach Izar said, hey, we're playing for playoff seeding now. We're not just playing to make the playoffs. We're playing for seeding, and that matters. So I think this fan base, which has been hit or miss in the past, is going to support the team. It's the stupid field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Well, Coach Izar has built a winning program, and I do believe the fans will show up, especially when you could talk a little trash to your crosstown rival. I mean, that always adds a little element of, hey, we should go out and support the team. I mean, how many road games can you really get to as a Rudder fan? The answer is probably 1 or 2. This is absolutely, if not the only one of the 2 that you can make it.
For sure. Now, Alex, what's the key for Rudder not to make this, moment too big for them? Obviously, we've seen teams do that before and it doesn't turn out well for them. So how big is it for Rudder to not make this moment too big?
Yeah, I've watched Rudder play twice this season. The first one was when they beat Huntsville, and Rudder was on a roll, and I was kind of wondering, like, how are they going to do in this big stage on the road against a really good team that's had their number year in and year out? And they got down, they stayed composed, and they were able to rally and win. But then a couple weeks later, when they went on the road to Montgomery, they had all the cameras on them. Dave Campbell's was out there with the big cameras in the TV truck, and they just came out flat and got in a hole in the first half that was just too big to overcome. And so that was my question this week. Like, how do you guys not make this moment too big, knowing what's at stake, knowing what happened last year? You're motivated to go and win this game because of that. Came so close to doing that. And that was the game that kept them out of the playoffs. I mean, had they won that game, we would be talking about how Rudder's building this program, like 2 years in a row going to the playoffs. This has been the season of milestones. Last year would have been the season of, milestones. But, what really stood out to me after that Montgomery loss is that Rudder's captain, MJ Hurd, stood up in front of the whole team and said, hey, this is what we needed. You know, not many coaches are going to say, yeah, we take moral victories, but, you know, in a game like that, you have to learn from mistakes. And I think that Rudder did. You know, they realized that, hey, we belong in this fight just as much as they do. And, you know, we got the guys that can go toe to toe. So let's just go out and do it. And, you know, I think that this Rudder team is motivated. You know, they seem the focus seems to be there. And that's the big difference in this team, I think, compared to teams that passed it with Rudder. And so I'm really curious to see if they can come out strong. You know, they need to limit the self-inflicted mistakes. You know, in that loss to Montgomery, they had 3 interceptions. One of them was a pick six. The other 2 were down toward the red zone that kept them from scoring and allowed Montgomery to build that lead without really being challenged. So that's kind of the things that I'm looking for from this Rudder team this week. And, you know, I would be surprised if that focus is not there, given what they've been through and what they're trying to accomplish. Mike?
Can I add one more thing real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Rudder's coming off a bye, and they were banged up, and they've been banged up this year. And when I talked to Coach Izar yesterday, he mentioned not only getting guys healthy, but getting their grades in order. So the bye week allowed them to catch up academically and also get healthy. And you just talked about Consolidate, they may be down to their 3rd and 4th running backs. They're starting quarterbacks out for the foreseeable future at a minimum. That bye week could not have come at a better time for Rudder to catch up in those 2 regards. And also, you mentioned MJ Hurd. How about him getting his 9th D1 offer from Yale yesterday? He has multiple Ivy League offers. So, you know, we always talk about kids getting the Bama offer or Florida or whatever, like SEC, Power 5. How about MJ, man? He's going to have his choice of an Ivy League college to go to for free, play football, and continue his academic career. I know, Abigail, I believe you did a story on him earlier this year. It was a phenomenal story. He's just a phenomenal kid. So, attaboy, MJ. Like, keep killing it, man.
Yeah, great guy. I'm so excited for him. I think he's one of those players that you just have to root for. I mean, they're not only just good people, but you know, a great player, like we said, on the field. So super excited for him, and I think they're going to do great this week. So we'll see. But I'm excited either way to see this matchup. I'm sure y'all are.